Hey guys, tonight we embark on a journey back in time where stone castles pierce the sky and the whispers of monasteries linger in the wind. Picture yourself in the medieval era, surrounded by candlelit rooms and the subtle echoes of Gregorian chants. Here, the Pope stands at the helm, not just as a shepherd of souls, but as a formidable political force wielding power across continents. Yet with such influence comes a tapestry of scandals that would make even the most stoic of monks blush. Yes, you probably won't survive this time, unscathed by the betrayed alliances and secret tapestries of deceit. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to hear where you're tuning in from, so drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. As you step into this world, you find yourself walking the cobblestone streets of Rome, where the smell of history rises from ancient stones. Here, the papacy isn't merely a spiritual beacon, but a bustling center of intrigue. You close your eyes for a moment and feel the sun warming your face, imagining the opulent life within the Vatican walls. At this time, the papal court is a whirl of crimson robes and whispered conversations where each day brings new challenges and deceptions. Picture Pope Leo X, a figure draped in velvet and gold, often seen enjoying magnificent banquets while plotting his next political move. Did you know he was famous for spending lavishly on the arts financing projects that transformed the city, but leaving a gaping hole in the Vatican's coffers? His ambition was perhaps his greatest strength and flaw. He ran the papal treasury so dry that historians still debate whether his financial excesses contributed to the Protestant Reformation's momentum. You find yourself eavesdropping as cardinals stroll past their voices, a hush of Latin phrases mingling with the scent of incense. The opera romana rings with the sound of clashing philosophies and theological debates, each encounter charged with the potential for grand alliances or devastating betrayals. Just as Pope Urban II once called for the First Crusade from Clermont-Ferrand, igniting a sequence of events that would embroil Europe and the Near East in conflict for centuries, this is an era where every word and deed resounds beyond its immediate moment. You feel a shiver down your spine, recalling the surprising detail that some popes like John XIII ascended to power as young as 18, thrust into an arena teeming with deceit and danger. It's easy to envision what life might have been like for such a youthful leader in a world where power struggled against virtue and ambition, often conquered both. As the scene shifts, you drift past frescoed walls and through narrow corridors where solemn-seeming clergy debate urgent matters. Here, the idea of a virtuous papacy tangles with the stark realities of greed and ambition. The papal city is alive with uncertainty and mystery, and yet there's a familiar comfort in the rhythm of daily rituals. The bell tolls the prayers, the soft rustling of robes, and as you watch, you realize that not everything is as it seems in these formidable halls. Later popes, such as Alexander VI from the infamous Borgia family, were said to have dabbled in all sorts of nefarious schemes, from corruption to more sinister deeds. Tales of lavish parties and secret meetings paint a picture of a medieval Vatican less like a spiritual haven and more akin to a grand theater of politics and power play. But even amidst the chaos and murmured scandals, there is also hope and innovation. The peaceful serenity of the Vatican gardens offers refuge and inspiration, where contemplation and quiet can sometimes give rise to profound insights. You sense the tension in the air where ideals and machinations coexist, a palpable duality that colors each decision and dictates the course of countries and kings. As you linger in this world of contrasting truths, you're drawn into the complexity of the papacy's history. Every turn in the story of medieval Rome is laden with the potential for renewal or destruction, just like the goat fat trick you heard about earlier. It's both curious and dangerous. Here in this delicate dance of power and faith, you're reminded of the importance of stories, of how they weave into the fabric of our shared past, intimately shaping the tale of humanity. And so the journey continues, each whispering wind eager to tell its secret, each shadow more profound, beckoning you further into the depths of this enthralling bygone world. The candle flickers gently in the background, casting soft shadows across the stone walls of the medieval room you find yourself imagining. Oh, the tales these stones could tell. But tonight we delve into the life of a figure cloaked in mysteries and myths, a figure often imagined as a saintly figure bestowing blessings far and wide. You picture him wearing a grand flowing robe, raising a benevolent hand to offer peace, forgiveness, and wisdom to the masses. This is the image of the Pope you've come to know, a shepherd to his flock, a constant beacon of hope. But as you ease into this evening's story, let's be candid. This is far from the full picture. Forget about living a peaceful, saintly existence. Being the Pope in medieval times was fraught with perils fit for a Game of Thrones episode. Power struggled beneath those impressive robes. You can almost see it, can't you? A pope who might also be, say, power mad, bent on fortifying Vatican treasure rooms, building moats around his strongholds, and perhaps even engaging in less than holy political schemes. During medieval times, the papacy was more than merely a spiritual seat. It was a throne of vast influence, a magnet drawing the ambitious and the highly cunning. Historians argue over whether the intrigue was more thrilling than dangerous, or simply a necessary evil in protecting the church from both internal and external threats. The medieval pope was not just cloistered away in quiet halls meditating on peace. He was in the center of the world, stage fielding messages from kings, settling disputes that toppled governments, and managing not just movable wealth, but also immovable lands, collectively known as the Papal States. This pope wasn't just giving sermons, he was orchestrating symphonies of strategy and power plays. It was said that the intrigue was visible, even in how Pope Leo X, for example, conducted his lavish lifestyle. Part of his canon included organizing expensive feasts and grand events. Some whispered reverently about others with raised eyebrows. Did he really spend vast sums acquired from church indulgences on art and extravagant parties? Or was this just a myth spun by his detractors? The jury's still out on that one. and the debate continues under academic lamplight. Now picture yourself transported to an era bustling with artisans and soldiers under a clouded sky where you're casually stepping over cobblestones toward St. Peter's Basilica. What do you hear? The murmur of negotiations mixed with the quiet steps of monks, the clinking of coins, and echoes of Latin diplomacy rattling amongst stone corridors. Ah, yes, being the Pope wasn't merely about offering metaphysical comfort. It was also about urgency and immediacy, as weighty as the gold-embroidered robes he wore. Securing those walls, stockpiling the Vatican treasury, essential efforts to keep the Church afloat through endless cycles of shifting allegiances and territorial disputes. Who could fault a man for safeguarding his home against the invasions of foreign powers and the building of moats? Imagine the sweat that went into every shovel of dirt turned up around the papal castles. Certainly not your typical scene of spiritual reflection, but part of the age nonetheless. To find peace amid such chaos, you mustn't drift into this life unprepared. These men were human after all, and human nature hasn't changed all that much. Every decision, even those shrouded in divine intent, was rooted in an earthly agenda of securing power, ensuring stability, and maintaining the image of the papacy. As you gradually sink deeper into the lore of this intricate past, let a gentle sense of wonder wash over you. Imagine the Pope's quiet moments under moonlit skies, reflecting, perhaps, on the burdens of leadership. Was he sincerely striving for spiritual illumination? Or was he reminiscing on new plans to notify bishops scattered across kingdoms, sending them away with blessings, thinly veiled behind diplomatic commands? Just as you begin to settle in these thoughts, whispering winds of historical uncertainty find their way into your musings. Some argue the motivations of any pope weren't a matter of good or bad, but rather a delicate negotiation with history itself, contending with a time when spiritual leadership was indistinguishable from political clout. Your adventure through medieval papal history leaves you with a newfound appreciation for a role that demanded so much from those who took it on, much more than just grace and wisdom. The Pope was a figure painted with shimmering visions of peace and real-world schemes in shadows a stark contrast, yet a complete picture for the backdrop of medieval Europe. As you continue this imaginative journey, thoughtful layers peel back gently, cradling you in the bedtime history of a bygone era, rife with stories far too complex for mere labels of good or evil. The bells of Rome are ringing, echoing through cobblestone streets, bathed in the early light of a sun not yet fully risen, calling you into a world that's both real and whisperingly unreal, as if you were wandering through dreams and history all at once. You find yourself standing in the marble halls of grandeur and decadence, the very heart of the Holy Roman Empire at a time when religion and politics dance closely together, their steps not always innocent. It's the year 955, and the Vatican resonates with secrets. You turn a corner, and there he is, young Octavianus, a mere 18-year-old, barely more than a boy, yet he carries the weight of the papal tiara upon his brow. His appointment is a twist of fate, heavily influenced by his powerful family, not least of them his father, Duke Alberic II of Spoleto, who wielded ambition like a sword. and made sure it pointed straight at the papal throne for his son. As Octavianus is anointed Pope John XX, the air is thick with anticipation and murmurs. Would he prove to be a shepherd or a wolf? Historians might argue, casting shadows and debates across time. But in this world, in this moment, your eyes are drawn to the lavish indulgence that sweeps over the Lateran palace under John's influence. Nothing remains sacred. Wine flows like water. Laughter mixes with the clinking of coin. And it all feels like a fevered dream that you probably won't survive if you were actually there. John XIII's reign begins to grow infamous. Tales will be told of how the ecclesiastical robes merely concealed a youth drawn to the wavelengths of the earthly delights louder than the hymns he ought to nurture. He gambles with the fervor of one who believes fortune is more goddess than dame, presses the finality of dice and card against futures that should be built on piety and pragmatism. You wander through the noise, and in the corners of this grand marital debauchery, rooms flicker with soft candlelight or burn brighter than bonfires, catering to pleasures that make the pious shudder. The palace, once a sanctified space, now breathes with excess a brothel enshrined where there should be chants of prayer and whispers of confession. It stirs a scandal that critics and defenders will quibble over for generations, leaving you to wonder, with a smile or a frown, whether it's all true or just the fervid flourishes of imagination. Among the tapestry of shadows and light, you see the political threads tangling. John reaches beyond his whispered intrigues and reckless indulgences and dreams of power on a larger stage. Allies must be wooed like Otto, the Saxon king, who strides across Europe with dreams of his own to unite and to rule, not dissimilar to the young pope's ambitions. For a moment they stand together as if in the glow of a celestial alliance, and the world watches with bated breath. But promises that fly swiftly on the tongues of the ambitious often flutter, leaving only the breath of treachery behind. The alliance falters as John's mind dances back through shadows and temptations slipping towards betrayal. Some say it was ambition unchecked. Others whisper of pressures unseen from within these sacred yet corrupted walls. The trust crumbles, leaving Ottawas with a bitter tang of treason. You can almost hear the whispered regret as the two paths diverge, setting a course for conflicts that would echo through time, where scholars and storytellers alike dissect the fall of friendships, the losses of kingdoms, the tragedies wrapped in half-truths. John XII's reign embarks on a course that ripples as far as the distant lands under the North Star, and the skies over Rome weep silent tears, a strange parallel to the soft rain that started outside your window, inviting you to further submerge into the narrative. Historians still debate at which point John lost control, not only of his kingdom of faith, but perhaps of his own soul's path. You think of the young pope, that boy wearing the weight of centuries upon his shoulders, caught between the realm of God and man, everyone aware of their role, but not its boundaries. There's a lesson wrapped within these walls, decorated by follies and glories. When power is unbridled by morality, even the mightiest can stumble in the dark corridors of temptation. A gentle yawn starts to tug at the edges of your consciousness, lulling your thoughts gently from the busy labyrinth of ancient Rome back to your warm cradle of present reality. You let it take you a reminder to let go, to allow the stories of the past to settle like soft dust on the floor of your mind. The tower bells are softer now, as if the hushed embrace of night wraps the stones in layer upon layer of time. There beneath the vast sky of 19 centuries past, you drift carefully into the quiet, where popes and kings dissolve into dreams, and you find your peace resting under the same celestial dome that watched them all. Gambling reels spinning, and dice clattering echo in the background, as you imagine yourself in a dimly lit chamber where flickering candlelight dances on the stone walls. You find yourself surrounded by an opulence contrasted with shadowy figures engaged in games of chance. In this atypical tableau sits John XIII, the youthful pope, whose penchant for gambling is as well known as his aversion to the traditional duties of his office. It's not every night that you wander through the corridors of medieval Rome, but here you are, witnessing the curious life of a man whose scandalous actions are whispered in hushed tones throughout the city. John's reign is a tumultuous one where the line between vice and virtue blurs often. It's said that he's more familiar with the seductive charm of playing cards than the somber silence of prayer. As he tosses the dice across the makeshift altar, you can't help but wonder how the papal chambers have transformed from a sanctum of faith into this den of hazard. Historians still debate whether his gambling exploits were exaggerated by those who sought to defame him, but it's undeniable that his reputation for such excess was fuel enough for the fires of controversy. His mistresses, yes, plural, are the subjects of even more salacious tales woven into the scandalous tapestry that defines his papacy. As you stroll through this metaphorical gallery of his life, you can imagine the magnificent palaces that served as stage for these liaisons. Above the murmurs of chants echoes a hint of laughter, trailing back to the past where John and his companions delight in their libertine pursuits. It's a strange paradox how a man vested with the highest religious authority seemed to find solace in earthly distractions. He often disregarded church traditions, and while some clerics fumed nobles and other power players viewed this with growing unease. You might wonder how the walls of the Vatican didn't collapse under the weight of so many whispered prayers for intervention or reckoning. The growing dismay among nobility and clergy reaches its zenith when Otto and the Holy Roman Emperor enters with his stern resolve. His footsteps are heavy with purpose as he approaches, driven by the outrage shared by many. Imagine the clamor of meetings and secret councils as they plot to bring order to this ecclesiastical chaos. Otto, armed not just with the power of his sword, but the authority of his position, steps into the picture, with intent to correct what he sees as an affront to God and governance alike. There's an irony in the air. The sovereign, who wears both crowns of empire and piety, is brought to heel not by angels or saints, but by the particularly earthly concern of political stability. As Otto's army positions itself at the gates demanding order and reform, John's once unfettered antics falter, his gaming tables eerily quiet under the weight of this new threat. One might imagine Otto's patience stretched thin by reports of misrule and spiritual transgression finally snapping. The urgency of his actions is mirrored in the swift motions of his forces ready to replace a man whom no longer seems fit to bear the burden of the papacy. Yet as the story unfolds, this deposition isn't simply the fall of a pope. It's an act rich with the drama of power reclaimed of a king standing up to a cleric irreverent of his sacred charge. And so, in a dramatic upheaval, Otto orchestrates John's removal, a scene loud with declarations and solemn with consequence. You can sense the breathless pause throughout Rome, the hushed anticipation before the fervor of gossip spreads like wildfire. The throne of St. Peter, vacant now of its occupant, looms silent, as if waiting to reclaim its sanctity. But the tale doesn't end here. With a resilience born of youth or folly, John XXI makes a daring return, a gambit of political deftness or sheer recklessness, finding allies in unexpected places. It's whispered that he slipped back under the cover of night, or perhaps through allegiances unseen until critical. His reappearance becomes the stuff of legend, where tales of conspirators and sudden turns keep listeners like you on edge, anticipating what intrigue shall come next. In this landscape where loyalty shifts as easily as sand, the return of John is a fleeting moment of triumph, tempestuous in its unfolding. You find yourself considering the resilience of power, its capacity to ebb and flow as tangible, yet elusive as the shadows cast by fervent candlelight. As you rest in this world, far removed yet strikingly vivid, ponder how such stories bear lessons cloaked in their drama. Even now, as thoughts of ancient scandal and scheming slowly transform into dreams, allow the gentle whispers of history to lull you into a soothing sleep. You find yourself wandering through the serene yet tumultuous corridors of history, where whispers of bygone days lace the air like a gentle lullaby. Amidst this vast tapestry, you come upon a peculiar tale, one that might just stretch your imagination and tickle your sense of disbelief. You're standing in front of an ancient towering cathedral, its stones worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. Inside, the scent of incense weaves a sacred spell drawing you towards the past. It's the early 11th century, and you feel the hustle and bustle of Rome around you. Here, in a place fraught with intrigue and ambition, you meet a character so enigmatic that you might not believe he truly existed. Pope Benedict IX. They call him a name you'll hear, whispered through the marbled halls and among the dusty records. Imagine a man who not once, not twice, but on 3 separate occasions ascended to the papal throne. A feat so unusual, you might think it's the stuff of legends. Benedict IX's first reign began in 1032. Picture a Rome simmering with power plays, every corner, every shadow holding secrets. And young Benedict, not yet out of his 20s, was thrust upon the papacy thanks to family influence and a few well-placed bribes. The heralds of history tell us that he loved a good spectacle perhaps too much. His reigns, short yet dramatic, were marked by scandalous tales of wild banquets that shook the very foundation of religious decorum. Benedict's interests seemed less about divine duty and more about personal pleasures. The world spun tales of his indulgences, perhaps exaggerated by rivals or just bystanders enchanted by the gossip. Historians still debate whether his purported debaucheries were truly as extravagant as described, but the stories have etched themselves into the narrative of time. A young pope with the charm of a rogue, bringing his own version of revelry to the Vatican. There's a tale, one that almost feels lifted from a mischievous fable, that Benedict IX, in a moment emblematic of his peculiar papal career, actually sold the papacy. Minds might reel at this conceivable betrayal, but records suggest it was sold to his godfather, John Gratian. This act, bridging the surreal and the scandalous, paved the way for yet another chapter in his strange saga of returns. Benedict would reclaim the papacy not once but twice more. The papacy back then must have seemed like a revolving door for Benedict. From 1044 to 1047, as constantly shifting as Rome itself, his departures and returns unfolded. Some say he left for love, others for wealth. Whatever the truth, it fueled the mythos surrounding him. Was it his uncanny charm or sheer opportunism? Imagine how with each disappearance, the city learned to brace itself for his possible return. Part hopeful, part wary. Perhaps just as the murmur of the early evening fades into night, the followers of Rome wondered with each sun setting if Benedict would reappear like some capricious spirit of papal history. This curious pope, more legend than leader, embodied a time when the line between the sacred and the profane blurred like the horizon at dusk, a reminder that the stories whispered through these stones beneath the silent arches of these cathedrals carry echoes of lives as varied and unpredictable as the winds. You might feel a tinge of disbelief at such tales. After all, popes weren't supposed to be larger than life, were they? But tread carefully through the annals of history, and you'll find that the truth often has room for spiritual guides who were human, all too human. As you're drawn deeper into this quirky recounting of lives long past, allow the quiet wonder of such chronicles to lull you into a gentle slumber. Just as this tapestry of history unfolds, unwind your thoughts and drift peacefully into the night's embrace, where only dreams and shadows dance. Imagine for a moment that you find yourself wandering through the echoing halls of medieval intrigue, where shadows cling to the corners like whispers of scandalous tales. You walk softly your steps, gently brushing against the ancient stone floors, as drafts of cool air swirl around you, carrying with them stories long forgotten by the ages. Your journey tonight takes you to a time when the papal throne was not just a seat of spiritual guidance, but a stage for human ambition and desire. You are drawn into the story of a rather unusual Pope Benedict IX, a figure whose life was more a dizzying dance of power and infamy than a serene account of holiness. Born into the powerful Tusculan family, you quickly realize that the path that led him to the papacy was not one paved with piety, but rather with the usual twist of noble family affairs. Benedict IX, rumor has it, was made pope around the tender age of 20, a fact that might raise quite some eyebrows as you imagine such a youthful figure bearing the weight of the church's legacy on his shoulders. As you listen to the tales unfold, a surprising detail catches your attention. To the amazement of many, young Benedict was rumored to be more enamored with the life of pleasure than with clerical duties. The extraordinary life he led culminated in a rather notorious scandal. He was accused of selling his papal throne, purportedly motivated by a desire to marry. You ponder this peculiar act and wonder about the alluring prospect of love that could lead a man to forsake the Vatican's crown. And yet, despite his audacious act, destiny did not favor his intentions, for his attempts to marry were in vain, leaving him without pontifical powers or marital bliss. Your mind drifts to yet another character painted vividly in these historical annals. This time it is Sergius III, whose life story adds yet another layer to this tapestry of papal intrigue. Sergius, you learn, fathered a child named John with Marozia, a noblewoman from the very influential Theophylact family. This child, raised in the halls of power and shadow, would go on to become Pope John XIII. You note with interest how historians still debate whether John Armoit's papacy was orchestrated purely by familial machinations, or if he held any genuine clerical conviction of his own. As the narratives weave together, a new term is introduced to your lexicon: pornocracy. It refers to this peculiar era where the control over papacy was enmeshed in the power struggles of noble families, a time marked by the sway of Marozia and her kin. It's moments like these that captivate your imagination as you try to reconcile how a time of spiritual leadership intersected so dynamically with earthly political games. Wandering through this woven history, you reflect on how the interplay of human ambitions and divine duties seem to create a background hum, like the soft fan you might turn on to ease into sleep. You imagine those echoing footsteps in the grandiose halls, reminders of the ambitions that have played out in these silent spaces, evoking a sense of awe, tinged with a light sarcasm about the sometimes less than holy behavior of those draped in holy robes. The story of Benedict's and Sergius's complicated ventures into blending familial aspirations with their roles in the church feels like a whisper underscored by the Lord's own mysterious laughter, a gentle reminder that while time has irreversibly moved on, human nature perhaps remains unchanged. As you ponder these tales, you are left with a sense of the remarkable journey the church, filled with its own set of challenges and triumphs, has traversed through the corridors of history. And tonight, as you listen, you are left to gently fall asleep with the echoes of history, cradling you in a timeless lullaby of past and present. You wander down the winding corridors of history, your mind gently exploring its twists and turns, like you're tracing the edge of an ancient map. Tonight, your journey takes you to a curious and rather macabre event, the Cadaver Synod of 897, a tale almost unbelievable in its bizarre unfolding. Imagine a time in Rome when intrigues danced through the air-cloaked figures whispered in shadowed corners, and the church, as much a political beast as a spiritual guide, was tangled in plots and power struggles. The Pope at the time, Pope Stephen VI, had a peculiar bone to pick, though in this case, perhaps it's more accurate to say a corpse. Pope Formosus had long lain buried, his chapter seemingly closed. But Stephen, in what might strike you as an extreme measure of settling old scores, had him exhumed. His lifeless form was placed on a throne, dressed in papal robes, the scene as surreal as the wildest medieval dream. There's one for the history books, a dead pope propped up to face posthumous judgment. Historians still debate the real reasons behind Stephen's actions, perhaps a mixture of personal vendetta and political maneuvering, but the sight alone must have struck those present like a ghost story come alive. Before you can cast it aside as dramatic fiction, consider that this gruesome trial wasn't held in the shadows, but in the full view of a council. Witnesses included bishops, priests, and noblemen, people of considerable influence, now watching this ghastly spectacle. The accusations piled high, an illegal papacy ambition, unbefitting a man of God, all hurled at the mute figure configured grotesquely in its throne. An eerie stillness must have filled the hall, broken only by Stephen's impassioned and at times frantically animated voice. Imagine you're in the darkened audience, the candles, flickering light playing tricks on your eyes as it casts long shadows across the scene. Try not to flinch as we learn of more eccentric courtroom proceedings. The corpse, unable to defend itself, had a deacon tasked with voicing supposed replies. The idea of such a tribunal would be almost comical, if not for its grim earnestness. As the trial concluded with predictable conviction, the anger of the people began to brew. The Romans, ever passionate and fiercely proud, were aghast at the spectacle. Public outrage simmered to a boiling point, sparking riots that coursed through the city like a tempest. Pope Stephen, once the commanding figure in this topsy-turvy court, found himself the defendant in an informal trial of collective morality. The uproar was such that it swept Stephen from power in a tidal wave of indignation. In time, maybe it was days or mere heartbeats later, Pope Stephen met his end in the very prison where he was confined by those who grew to despise him. His death was as tumultuous as his papacy, another chapter in the chaotic annals of Vatican history. Yet out of the ashes rose Pope Romanus, who earnestly tried to cleanse the church of this dark stain. He sought to restore some form of order and sanity, resetting the scales that had tipped wildly under his predecessor's hand. Even in such turbulent times, Romanus's attempts may not have curbed all the chaos, but his efforts shone like a beacon struggling to pierce the storm. Historians wonder if his measures could ever truly wash away the memory of this ordeal, or whether the echoes of that trial would forever cling to the walls of the Lateran Basilica. And as you drift through this labyrinth of past events, reflect on how wondrously bizarre history can be striking chords that resonate with tales spun of fantasy, yet woven from threads of truth. With this reflection, let the soft, comforting embrace of night surround you, carrying you gently towards dreams, where the pages of history turn gracefully without the turmoil of reality interrupting their dance. Imagine yourself transported back to the year 1309, in the heart of a medieval landscape, where narrow cobblestone streets wind through quaint towns. The air is thick with the aroma of lavender fields nearby, and the sound of an occasional horse-drawn carriage creaks through the silence of the evening. Here you find yourself in Avignon, a picturesque town in the south of France, where an intriguing episode in history is about to unfold. It is a time when the seat of the papacy itself has shifted, leaving the sprawling Vatican City behind, if only temporarily. Your curiosity is piqued as you learn that the Pope, who traditionally resides in Rome, has moved to this charming Provençal city. This is the beginning of what would famously be known as the Avignon Papacy, a span lasting from 1309 to 1377. The reason for this surprising move? Well, it seems political influence knows no bounds, and France's sway over the papacy was at its peak. Avignon, though a beautiful locale, is under this peculiar, almost controversial cloud of French courtly influence as powerful forces jockey for control of Christendom. As you meander through the grand halls of the former palace turned papal residence, you can't help but notice the opulence that surrounds you. Tapestries depicting biblical scenes and glittering chandeliers testify to a lavish lifestyle. The whispers of criticism, however, are equally discernible, as the papacy's new home garners the less flattering nickname Babylonian Captivity. It evokes images of Old Testament stories like that of the Jewish exile in Babylon, suggesting that this period may hold dark notes for the church. Historians, you learn, still debate whether this exile was indeed as detrimental as some chroniclers suggest, or merely a different chapter in the church's storied history. On one hand, the papal court in Avignon grew immensely wealthy thanks to its proximity to the flourishing trade routes of medieval Europe. On the other hand, luxury and excess often paved the way for decay, and corruption was said to seep through the gilded cracks of this newfound grandeur. You notice an exquisite dinner being prepared in the kitchens, a feast likely to be enjoyed by the prelates. However, you're struck by the thought that among the clergy, not everyone was thrilled by the pageantry of feasts and the endless spectacles performed for visiting dignitaries. One discerning cardinal perhaps would have much preferred the quiet and earthy smells of Rome to the dazzling soirees of Avignon. The opulence around you is palpable, yet it raises questions. Were the popes truly seduced by the sumptuousness, or was all of this merely a necessary adjustment to the rhythms of a new court, far from their ancestral home? What is certain is that this dramatic shift, seemingly caused by the lure of political power and the intricate web woven by King Philip IV of France, changed the landscape of the papacy for years to come. As your evening in Avignon draws to a close, you feel the cool breeze of history whisper around you. It rustles through the ornate arches and creeps through the passageways of the papal palace. You ponder over the decisions made within these stone walls that would ripple across Europe like a pebble thrown into a still pond. This chapter of history was not marked merely by luxury alone, but by the peculiar dance of power and faith. You drift to sleep with echoes of the past, meshing with the rustling leaves outside. The narrative may seem like an illusion dissipating into a starry Provençal sky, but the legacy of Avignon's papal residency remains as vivid as the moonlight that bathes the ancient buildings. And as the tales of old begin to dissolve into the night, you can't help but await the next weave in the expansive tapestry of history, a tapestry that beckons exploration with each unfinished thread. In the quiet heart of medieval Europe, you find yourself standing in a moment pregnant with tension and uncertainty. You're surrounded by a world where whispers of division weave through the air, looping around corners of a Rome that seems too still, as though it holds its breath. The year is 1378, and you bear witness to the dawn of the Western Schism, a time when the fabric of Christendom is stretched taut, ready to unravel at a single tear. You see the figure of Pope Urban VI in Rome, a man who rose sharply from obscurity, unexpected in his fierce austerity. Historians still debate whether his reformist zeal was genuine or simply too much for those accustomed to an easier path of privilege. Urban's reforms might have promised purity, but to many, they felt like chains. Meanwhile, in the sultry embrace of Avignon's lavender fields and sun-drenched palaces, you catch a glimpse of Clement VII. His presence there, a pope as valid as Urban, in the eyes of many, stirring an alternate allegiance, lays the groundwork for a rivalry that would slice through the allegiances of kingdoms and the hearts of their people. You notice how easily politics mingle with piety, a water and oil dance of sorts, never truly blending, always on edge. Imagine walking through streets brimming with proclamations, debates that cut through the laughter of marketplaces and the quiet of cathedrals. It's as if you've stumbled upon a medieval chessboard, each move laden with consequence. These two rival popes, Urban in Rome and Clement in Avignon, become the anchors of a divide, a chasm as deep as the distances between the holy cities. This disagreement, you realize, captures the essence of a Europe pulling in opposite directions, dragged down pathways, both paved by power and prayer. Several years blink by, and you find yourself drifting into 1409, where the pulse of Europe quickens in the shadow of Pisa. It seems the Council of Pisa gathers as a shining beacon, a hopeful assembly to mend the ever-widening schism. But to your intrigue and perhaps amusement, this hopeful patchwork attempt only adds a third thread to the fray. Alexander VIII, a supposedly unifying figure, who instead adds layers to the ecclesiastical clutter. Historians scratch their heads over this decision, arguing whether it was born of desperate optimism or tragic hubris. One thing they agree on, however, is the irony that now three popes vie for spiritual supremacy more, are definitely not merrier when it comes to the hearts of the faithful. It is a time marked by strange choices and stranger consequences. You might chuckle at the absurdity of it all, like watching a troupe of jesters trying to spin plates on wobbly sticks. But beneath the humor lies an unsettling truth. Belief has become as splintered as the leadership guiding it. As you wander through this tangled history, filled with declarations, excommunications, and the daily pulse of ordinary lives thrown into disarray, the weight of the years presses slightly on your shoulders. It's 1414, and you can almost sense a collective fatigue, settling, a yearning for resolution. Any resolution to soothe the division. The Council of Constance stands like a lighthouse in a stormy sea, calling out to tired sailors searching for land. This gathering aims to bind the fraying threads by deposing or securing the wandering popes, and in a sense return a fractured church to wholeness. Pope Martin V's name emerges like a whispered release from long-held breath. There's relief in the air, a wordless agreement for concord. Yet, as you follow the ebb and flow of the narrative, you find that simplicity often eludes history's grasp. While Martin V's ascension does mark an end to the schism's baffling tangle, The remnants of discord hang like cobwebs in quiet corners, once clear paths now, forever shadowed by questions of loyalty and doctrine. In this way, the Western schism fades not with an overwhelming cacophony of triumph, but with a gentle sigh, surrendering once more to the hushed harmony of a synchronized Europe. Throughout it all, you learn that it's the endurance of faith through chaos that truly steadies the lines across parchment maps and heart-led destinies. Perhaps now, as you let your mind wander from those cobblestone streets back to the comfort of where you lie, you find solace in knowing that history holds its lessons lightly, like a whisper, just before dreams whisk you away. History aches men's, and somehow always finds a way forward just as you do. As the details of the Western schism gently dissolve into the fog of restfulness, let your thoughts unfurl, drifting quietly like soft leaves across a calm lake. Become enveloped in the tranquility that awaits you at the close of each night, like an old friend ready to wrap you in their calming embrace. And with that, rest easy and let sleep cascade quietly over your sunset horizon. Pope Alexander VI, born Rodrigo Borgia, ascends the throne of the Papacy in the distant echoes of 1492. You wander through the echoing halls of history, where whispered secrets linger like a breeze through an ancient church. It was an era, not unlike a grand chess game in Europe, where power was the ultimate prize, and players shifted like restless tides. As you drift through the shimmering timeline, you sense the undercurrents of ambition that rode like whispers in the Vatican corridors. Rodrigo Borgia, navigating the labyrinth of ecclesiastical aspirations, secured the papal crown through a blend of persuasion influence and a dash of veiled bribery. Coins exchanged hands under the cloak of secrecy, each one sealing a pact towards his coronation. Historians still debate whether his election was purely a result of manipulation, or if his natural charisma played a part as well. You can't help but raise an eyebrow at the audacity of it all, a man who saw the world as a playground of power games. Once robed in the papal garments, Alexander VI's reign unfolded not unlike a vivid tapestry of splendor and scandal. You see the streets of Rome alive and vibrant, yet shadowed by rumors that danced about like mischievous specters. The air buzzes with tales of decadent banquets and the Pope's penchant for opulent celebrations. But it wasn't just wine and song in the papal apartments, for the family name Borgia carried a reputation that dripped with notoriety. The buzzingly infamous Borgia poison entered the annals of whispered horror, adding a sinister shade to their legacy. Was it true, you wonder, or merely the tales spun by those jealous of their rise? In the corridors of power, no figure loomed larger than his children, Cesare and Lucrezia Borgia. You imagine Cesare with eyes keen as hawks, navigating the turbulent seas of political ambition with a cunning unmatched by many. Lucrezia, too, with a beauty that seemed to sway not just hearts, but the very course of alliances. Alexander's children, harbingers of both hope and dread, were bestowed positions of influence, as if playing pieces on Rodrigo's strategic board. Cesare, shedding his cardinal robes for military garb, embodied a boldness that could conquer as much through charm as through his blade. Lucrezia, in turn, became an instrument of political unions, but not without shadows trailing her every step. Yet it is also questionable to label them solely as architects of cunning plots. Some contemporary whispers painted them as victims of political conspiracies themselves, misunderstood in caricatures drawn by envious adversaries. You're left pondering the stories where truth dances tantalizing close to myth. As you wander into the quieter chambers of Alexander's reign, scenes shift not just in grand ballrooms, but in silent conspiracies sealed behind Vatican walls. You feel the tension of ambition and looming betrayal, much like a storm cloud, gathering, casting an uneasy gloom even over triumphant landscapes. Journeying further, there's a gentle reminder woven within these tales. Ambition, as a double-edged sword, could cut both ways, either carving doctrine onto empire or scarring legacies onto history. You see how power shaped destinies, and in reflection, broke them upon the wheel of its own making. Here in this narrative resting in the quiet lilt of night, you ponder the intricacies of lives entwined with historical echoes. The Borgia's influence lingers still a testament to the mortality and ambition resonant in us all. With the soft rustle of time's pages, you sense a presence of complexity within simplicity, fascinating, tangled, yet serene. So as this chapter of history begins to draw its curtain closed, you are reminded to find peace in the unfolding tale. Let the soft shadows of this narrative envelop you like a gentle embrace, inviting calm and reflection. With that, the journey through Alexander and his scandal-touched papacy finds its lull, easing you into a slumber, wrapped in the whispers of time long past, where night gently covers the intricate stories and secrets of yore. You find yourself amidst the colorful chaos of the Italian Renaissance, where the intricate dance of power and politics unfolds like a grand play on an ancient stage. The vibrant streets of Rome hum with the clamor of merchants, with whispers and secrets of famous families echoing off the ornate stone walls. Tonight we follow the trails of two rather infamous figures twined into the very fabric of history, Cesare and Lucrezia Borgia, whose lives sway elegantly between fact and fervent legend. Cesare Borgia, you observe, has never walked a path easily followed. Born into power as the son of a pope, you would think his path was destined for greatness. And yet, Cesare navigated the shifting sands of fortune like a ship in storm-tossed seas. From cardinal to mercenary, his transformation was as remarkable as it was scandalous. In your mind's eye, Cesare strides with the confident air of one who understands the intricacies of both theological discourse and the blood-soaked negotiation of war. His robes, rich and luxurious, hang heavy with purpose, transformed from the pious purple of a cardinal to the armored glory of a conquering leader. You ponder this bold shift and wonder at the ambition driving a man to abandon a path of spiritual leadership for one embroiled in the gritty reality of military conquest. Yet, as scholars often argue, his motivations remain enigmatic, layered with the complexity of political intrigue. Whether driven by personal ambition or familial duty, Cesare carved his place in history through a series of bold power moves that still have historians scratching their heads. Was it strategic genius or sheer audacity? Perhaps both, merged seamlessly in the mind of a man unwilling to settle for the world as it was presented to him. And then there is Lucrezia, as stunning as she was mysterious, moving through the courts of Europe like a piece on a grand chessboard. From her childhood, Lucrezia Borgia was molded by those around her as if a living sculpture of alliances and marriages, all to solidify her family's grip on the fragile balance of power. You picture her moving through grand ballrooms, a vision of grace draped in silks and jewels, the air around her whispering with the faint buzz of speculation and rumor. Lucrezia's life, like a story half spun, is blurred with whispers of scandal. Was she merely a pawn used by her family? Or did she wield her own brand of power behind closed doors? The rumors of incest that cling to her story, despite their sensational nature, seem almost detached from reality, like shadows shaped by flickering candlelight. You sense the uncertainty seeping through historical accounts for truth, much like the dim corridors of ancient castles, often twists into shapes both strange and unforeseen. As you wander further into their lives, you uncover the surprising details that color their infamous reputation. Cesare's tactical brilliance on the battlefield, exemplified in his capture of Imola, or the guiding hand Lucrezia may have held over poison bottles and potent politicians. These tales invite you to step closer to peer beyond the curtain of time obscuring their truth. Historians still debate whether Lucrezia used her influence toward benevolent ends, or if she danced with the darker intentions attributed to her name. The Borgia's legacy thus remains an intricate tapestry, woven with threads of ambition, desire, and power. Tonight you find yourself drawn into their story, a narrative rich with the echoes of another age. You imagine the sensation of flickering torchlight, illuminating chronicles both luminous and shadowed, each revealing yet another facet of Cesare and Lucrezia's lives. Allow your mind to wander through the cobblestone pathways of Renaissance Italy, the dynamic interplay of art and political scheme ever present around you. As you view Cesare and Lucrezia's tale through the lens of time, imagine what truths lay buried beneath layers of gilded rumor and speculation. Follow this thread of history, woven by hands skilled in the craft of both eloquence and deception, tracing the lingering shadows cast by these notorious siblings. Marvel at the echoes swirling around them, for beneath the scandal, beneath the power plays and whispered tales, there lies a simple truth. History is alive with the spirits of those who dared to leave their mark for better or worse, like Cesare and Lucrezia Borgia. Let the gentle tones of yesteryear lull you as you drift into the comfortable embrace of sleep, holding on to the stories that have shaped what we understand of the world, incredible and oftentimes improbably true stories that whisper to us from the thresholds of our dreams. Imagine yourself once more on those bustling streets, weaving through the canvas of the Renaissance. As you find a quieter corner and gaze upwards, your eyes catch the divine, nimble strokes painted across the ceiling of a grand cathedral, the Sistine Chapel. It was Pope Julius II who envisioned this masterpiece, urging the reluctant genius Michelangelo to create the very skies that still captivate us today. Rumbling beneath these divine accomplishments, however, is the tale of a pope who was as fierce on the battlefield as he was passionate about art. Picture yourself standing beside him, both clad in armor, as you survey the army arrayed for battle. Daring and ambitious Julius II was often at the front lines, rallying his forces with a fire that burned bright beneath his papal crown. It's not every day you find a pope who'd rather trade an ornate cushion for the muddy trenches of warfare. Historians still debate whether he relished in the warfare itself or saw it as a necessary means to an end, perhaps a way to secure his vision for a unified and strong papal state. Whatever the truth, his aggressive nature was undeniable. You can almost feel the tremors of his steely resolve as the clamor of swords echoes around you. While his mind was a fortress of tactical schemes, his heart beat to the rhythm of the arts. Beyond the battlefields, you walk with him through the echoing halls of the Vatican, where artists like Raphael and Bramante were summoned to lay the foundations of beauty that would transcend time. Each brushstroke and architectural curve whispered a promise of eternity, a legacy that would endure long after the skirmishes of his age had faded into the annals of history. In truth, steering the helm of church and state was no easy task. Julius II's papacy was often beset by political storms, yet he navigated them with an eye not just on heaven, but on the human masterpieces he sought to bring into being. Occasionally you can sense his inner struggle, whether he was weighed down with the burdens of his ambition, or if every paintbrush that swept across the Sistine ceiling was a testament to his enduring vision. His critics, of course, were not shy in voicing their discontent. Some whispered that his passions and at times his belligerence were too audacious for a man of the cloth. Yet standing in the presence of his artistic commissions, surrounded by the ethereal beauty he championed, it's difficult not to sense a greater purpose behind his endeavors. Surprisingly, although fiercely remembered for his warrior pope persona, Julius also initiated efforts for peace. His league aligned against the French was as much a diplomatic maneuver as it was a military stratagem. The cityscapes and landscapes of Italy are shifting before your eyes now, as Julius's decisions weave a delicate tapestry of alliances and oppositions. Each thread tells its own story, highlighting the Pope's singular focus, an unwavering dedication to securing the Papal States, and leaving a lasting cultural footprint. In the quiet aftermath of a hard-won peace, you find Julius again amongst his beloved artworks, planning his next great commission. The idea of fostering a renaissance within the Catholic Church was at the forefront of his mind. He envisioned a realm where faith and creativity walked hand in hand, sowing the seeds for a legacy that would bloom long after his own time beneath the sun had faded. Renaissance. Italy unfolds layer by layer, its grandeur tempered by the humble piety and tumult of its time. Each city in Julius's world holds secrets and splendors that you walk past feeling the heartbeat of an era driven by both conflict and creativity alike. As twilight descends, you are left contemplating beneath the shadows of the towering architecture the legacy of Pope Julius II, etched in both stone and vivid fresco. It's a history that still captivates, with tales of valor art and an enduring quest for greatness. Though Julius himself may rest, his spirit rises with each brushstroke of Michelangelo and every arch of Bramante's dome. The echoes of his ambitions and the beauty he commissioned continue to resonate, inviting you to reflect on the enduring power of vision and the lengths a determined heart will go to see it realized. With this, you sink deeper into your pillow, the hum of history lulling you into restful slumber, carrying the impressions of saints and warriors into your dreams. Imagine yourself in a vast, opulent hall, the echoes of your footsteps softened by age-old marble and whispers of silk. The year is 1513, and you find yourself amidst the grandeur of the Vatican, where Pope Leo VIII has just ascended the papal throne. You can almost hear the rustle of his extravagant robes as he mingles among courtiers, his laughter ringing out like silver bells in the candlelit corridors. This pope, a Medici, stands out amidst the papal lineage for his fondness for the finer things in life, art, music, and all the splendor money could buy. But Pope Leo VI, basking in the glow of his illustrious family name, has left many historians puzzled. As you take in the scene, you might notice an air of indulgence, perhaps even excess. After all, this is a man who once famously quipped, "Since God has given us the papacy, let us enjoy it." And enjoy it he did with feasts and festivals that would put even the grandest of celebrations to shame. As you stroll through these gilded halls, you might feel a shiver run down your spine, for amidst the golden tapestries and lavish gatherings, an undercurrent of tension buzzes like murmurs in the Vatican gardens. The source of this unease, a little document known as the 95 Theses, penned by a certain Martin Luther, whose name is starting to echo through Europe like a clarion call. It's said that opposition often springs from where you least expect it. Perhaps as you wander, you might find yourself pondering this papal challenge. With its foundations firmly rooted in spiritual and worldly indulgences, Leo VI's Vatican had turned to the controversial practice of selling indulgences to fund the lavish renovations of St. Peter's Basilica. Imagine believers across the lands handing over their coins to buy absolution. It was like selling golden tickets to heaven, a celestial lottery, the proceeds of which padded the coffers of Rome. You're part of this spectacle, watching as the bustling energy of the Vatican seems to swirl around the clerical heads like a brewing storm. It is during this time that whispers started to rise, shadows creeping across the heart of Christendom. Among the Flemish tapestries and incense smoke, a quiet quake was shaking the foundations of the church. Little could Leo have known that simply dismissing Luther's initial critiques would ignite a firestorm. In the court of public opinion, this new voice carried weight, an unexpected match to the dry tinder of discontent. Historians wonder, was it Leo's tried patience, or his misjudgment of Luther's traction, that led to the fateful spread of Reformation ideas? Your mind turns to the town of Wittenberg, where Luther, an Augustinian monk with sharp intellect and firmer convictions, posted his 95 Theses on the church door, an act both dramatic and understated in its simplicity. And while you're curious about these ideas, you realize they are more than mere parchment and ink. They speak of a deep yearning for reform, for a church truer to the faith it professes. Back in Rome, The initial response was to brush off Luther's declarations as the work of an insignificant friar. Pope Leo X, perhaps thinking of more immediate pleasures and pressures, failed to acknowledge the burgeoning movement as it spread. It's easy to picture the Vatican at this time, filled with chatter and dismissals, perhaps even a roll of eyes at yet another zealous scholar. But what you might not have known is that as the tones of piety clashed with those of skepticism, a transformative era began. The indulgences so meticulously crafted to enrich the grandeur of the Vatican instead became the kindling for a Protestant blaze. Across Europe, people began to question and challenge, stirred by the audacity of Luther's act and his relentless discourse. Tiny sparks igniting pockets of reform here and revolution there. As your eyes drift from scene to scene, the historical weight of what you're witnessing presses in. Imagine the great cathedrals, the shifting alliances, and the fervor of new believers, each moved by a sense of righteousness and renewal. For Pope Leo, ensconced in the luxurious tapestry of his reign, these changes came as a stubborn wave to crash against the shores of his papal state. The Vatican, a haven of stability for generations, was now the reluctant host to growing debate and doubt. Yet amidst all this, the magnificent art and architecture flourished, as if in defiance of the turmoil continuing to rise, even as old religious tenets began to crumble. And so as you wander through this rich tapestry of history, the opulent and austere mingling in an intricate dance, you sense both the vibrancy and volatility of this period. The Protestant Reformation, much like a gently whispered secret that slowly amplifies to a roar, initiated not through the thunderous declarations of a mighty ruler, but by the earnest proclamations nailed to a church door by a monk with a mission. As you fall into this thread of time, the lessons and legacies echo softly around you, inviting contemplation in the quiet of your own thoughts, much like the soft hum of a fan that lulls you deeper into the narrative's embrace. As you settle into the gentle embrace of your cozy bed, the world around you grows quiet. The day's hustle and bustle drift away, replaced by the whispering lull of ancient tales. You find yourself stepping back in time, landing in a world where the hum of modern medicine has yet to unfold. Imagine, if you will, a time when the mysteries of the human body were explained not by science as we know it today, but by an intriguing blend of philosophy and early medical theory. The story of humoral theory weaves through this world like a cautious traveler on an uncharted road. Picture the scene. Small flickering lamps illuminate the cramped study of a Greek scholar. The air is thick with the scent of parchment and ink, a sign of ideas recorded with earnest hands. Here resides Hippocrates, often hailed as the father of medicine, whose groundbreaking thoughts on health are crafted in the very room you now imagine. In this ancient space, the theory of humors takes shape. It's a compelling notion, an idea that suggests your well-being is governed by 4 bodily fluids: blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. Each of these fluids, the humors, must be in balance for you to thrive. Picture them as players in a delicate dance within your body, their intermingling sway, dictating your physical and emotional health Blood, the vibrant essence of life, bestows upon you vivacity and warmth. Yellow bile fires the flames of metabolism and ambition, while black bile whispers of introspection and melancholy. Phlegm cools and soothes, embodying endurance and calm. Think of these four as your body's internal weather, shifting and changing, shaping your health, much like the turn of seasons shapes the earth. Enter Galen, another titan of early medicine, building upon Hippocrates' foundation. His meticulous studies of anatomy and his flair for public dissections make him both revered and questioned among peers. Galen champions the humoral theory, adding layers of complexity with his observations and interpretations. Yet there's a unique twist to Galen's work, his fascination with gladiators. Yes, it surprised many that these fierce warriors often became his subjects, their injuries providing a rich tapestry of anatomical exploration. You see, historians still debate how much of Galen's anatomical knowledge was theoretical versus observed, given the limited opportunities for dissection of human bodies. Between Hippocrates and Galen, a picture emerges, a blend of medical insight and philosophical musings, hinting at an understanding of health as a poetic dance rather than a scientific certainty. As you linger in this world of ancient medicine, a surprising detail comes to light. Imagine relying on these magical humors to explain every ailment, from the simple sniffle to the gravest plight. Excess blood, they'd tell you, might lead to fever, a condition best treated with bloodletting, a practice both horrifying and fascinating by today's standards. Yet at the time, this notion of balancing the body's humors was seen as a beacon of rational thought amidst the unknown depths of disease. There's a comforting charm in knowing that what began as an attempt to make sense of illness also touched the fringes of our most human experiences, emotions. The melancholic sway of black bile didn't just influence the body, it stirred the soul. This connection between the physical and emotional realms felt as logical to ancient healers as the passage of the sun across the sky. As you tuck these thoughts away, let them drift like leaves on a gentle breeze, flowing naturally from one to the next. Your journey through this ancient landscape offers glimpses into the past's attempts to demystify the human body. Each step leads you closer to understanding the foundations upon which modern medicine rests. Just as the sands of time continue their descent in the great hourglass of history, so does the ever-evolving quest for knowledge. Now allow yourself to sink deeper into your pillows, the story softly unraveling as dreams nuzzle against the edges of your consciousness. Let the calm waves of ancient knowledge carry you into night, where sleep and history intermingle like drops of ink in water, creating new patterns and stories to keep you company until morning's light gently stirs you awake. Imagine yourself drifting back through time into an ancient era where the stars themselves seemed closer and people looked to the skies for answers. You find yourself in the midst of bustling Athens, where chatter in ancient Greek fills the air. People swarm around a wise old physician, known for his revolutionary ideas. Tonight, under a canopy of stars, you'll explore the curious world of bloodletting, a practice as mysterious as the constellations above. In this world, The human body is a microcosm mirroring the universe. Physicians like Hippocrates and later Galen believe in the four humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, each corresponding to the elements of nature. Good health, they say, arises from a perfect balance among these humors. And when something goes awry, a wise physician knows that sometimes you just have to let it all out. Literally, picture yourself as an observer watching a young patient lying, still a nervous anticipation in their eyes as the physician prepares for bloodletting, the age-old solution to everything from fever to headache. The sharp lancet glints in the candlelight, and as it swiftly pricks the skin, a steady flow of blood is released. It's believed that with each drop flows away excess humor, restoring balance and health. Although you might think twice about living through such a remedy in reality. Flash forward now to medieval Europe, where the belief in the power of bloodletting persists with fervor. You meander through quaint cobblestone streets until you find yourself entering a humble barber's shop. Here the red and white pole twirls lazily outside, a symbol of expertise, not just in trimming hair, but also in the very art of bloodletting. These barbers double as surgeons, and beneath their aprons and scissors lie instruments ready to perform the task. As you look around, you notice a curious collection of tiny wriggling creatures, leeches. These slimy assistants have made their entrance in medieval practice, offering a more refined, perhaps even elegant approach to relieving the body of its burdensome blood. You watch somewhat fascinated as these leeches latch onto a patient's skin, effortlessly drawing blood with their small but mighty mouths. Despite the initial discomfort, it's said to be oddly effective, providing relief from various ailments. You hear the barber surgeon himself musing softly, noting how sometimes the patients do feel better, not that anyone's entirely sure why or how it works. There could be a hint of divine intervention, perhaps, or simply the fact that stopping to rest after feeling lightheaded from blood loss gives one a new perspective on their ailments. These barber surgeons wield knowledge passed down through generations, though historians still debate whether their skills bordered on artistry or were little more than well-intentioned guesswork. But one thing's for certain, despite the scarcity of understanding the true workings of the human body, many swear by these treatments. As you glance around the barber's shop, you might wonder about those who survived against all odds, benefiting from this practice, despite the lack of concrete science. The human body, resilient and mysterious, sometimes proves that a gust of hope might be just what the doctor ordered. In the comfort of your imagination, away from the gritty details, you find a sense of wonder at the ingenuity and tradition of these ancient and medieval practices. It's a testament to humanity's endless pursuit of health and balance, even when the pathway is fraught with uncertainty. You realize that much like your journey through these stories, each practice carries with it a piece of history, even when its effectiveness hangs in a delicate balance. As you reflect on these images, the dimmed lights around you gently coaxing your senses into relaxation, it's time to slowly drift away from the bustle of ancient and medieval times. Let the curiosity you've uncovered settle in like a soft blanket, And as you lay your head to rest, these fascinating relics of history hold a gentle reminder of the depth and color the past brings to our understanding. Inhale deeply, release slowly, and allow the calmness of the night to guide you into peaceful slumber. In the dim glow of a flickering candle, you find yourself in a small chamber filled with the scent of lavender. You've been exploring the streets of a bustling medieval town where the air is thick with mystery and the faint sound of distant chatter fills your ears. Tonight your journey takes an interesting twist, winding through the depths of history to unravel the strange beliefs and practices surrounding disease. Picture this. It's the 1600s, and you're standing in the middle of a bustling market. The air feels heavy, as if it carries whispers of the past. People around you are dressed in garments, far removed from modern fashion, carrying baskets filled with herbs and flowers. These aren't to be used for culinary delights, but for protection against the miasma, the ominous invisible fog believed to carry illness and decay. Miasma theory, as your guides through time explain to you, suggests that sickness doesn't come from unseen microscopic foes, as you know today, but from this foul-smelling air. This is the air that wafts above open sewers and hovers in rancid, crowded rooms. It's an unsettling thought, isn't it? That simply being near a malodorous stream or a pile of rotting waste could make you ill. But in the days of yore, this idea was as solid as any you've considered. As you wander further, an unusual figure catches your eye. A person cloaked in a long robe with a beaked mask that looks more like a creature from a child's nightmare than a doctor. This is the infamous plague doctor, their mask filled with aromatic substances, a protective charm they hoped against the perfidious smells. You might chuckle at their medieval naivety, but remember, these strange apparitions worked tirelessly amidst chaos driven by a sincere, if misguided, desire to heal. Historians still debate whether these masks offered any real protection, or if they merely provided comfort to those donning them. It remains a detail from history that drifts into legend as much a symbol of humanity's fight against the unknowable as it is of medieval superstition. You continue your exploration through the cobblestone streets, soaking in the peculiar contrast of belief and reality. A sudden burst of laughter spills from a nearby tavern, and you momentarily forget the fears of airborne disease. Yet just as quickly you recall the powerful grip that miasma theory held over society, influencing not only medicine, but the very streets beneath your feet. Urban planners, perhaps more innovative than they realized, started to reshape cities based on this theory. You find yourself standing on a freshly paved street, admiring an early attempt at urban sanitation. Wide boulevards allow the wind to sweep away what was thought to carry disease, while public health reformers advocate for cleaner, better ventilated cities, inadvertent harbingers of modern hygiene. Amidst this dizzying dance of past and present, you ponder how ideas, no matter their origins, steer the course of time. Strange, isn't it, how a wrong notion can lead to right actions, gently like the last note of a lullaby. This thought eases your mind, connecting the distant stories of masked fools to the very streets you walk today. As you prepare to leave this time, you take a deep breath free of miasma and allow yourself to appreciate how far knowledge has come. Yet no journey into the past is ever complete. You keep one eye on what history will reveal next, always a traveler at heart. Imagine yourself taking a slow, winding journey through history. In an era far removed from the fluorescent lights of today, you find yourself in ancient China, standing amidst scholars and doctors, their robes adorned with symbols of wisdom and mystery. The air is thick with the scent of incense mingling with the earthy aroma of herbs, and strange concoctions lined along the dark wooden shelves. Before you lies a shimmering liquid. Its silvery lure both mesmerizes and intimidates. Welcome to the world of alchemy and ancient medicine, where mercury, a metal, now known for its peril, was once revered as a cure-all. It glides like liquid moonlight believed by practitioners of yore to cleanse and heal. Its use widespread across cultures from Chinese alchemists to Greek physicians promised to purge impurities from the body, a hope so strong that it overshadowed the uncertainty of its outcomes. Picture yourself watching a patient being treated with mercury for syphilis, the shimmering liquid consumed with cautious optimism, despite the barbarity of such a treatment. Here you find the wonder of ancient remedy, yet you're also acutely aware with a dash of sarcastic inner thought that you probably won't survive this considering what we now know about mercury poisoning. But such was the faith in the trial and error of antiquity, a testament to their daring pursuit of health amid looming dangers. As you ponder this, consider the ways ancient civilizations leaned on mythology to explain their world. Tales and legends permitted dangerous practices to survive, a testament to the intertwining of story and science. It's ironic and fascinating how often a mythical narrative assured the efficacy of a bizarre treatment, letting it linger through generations until logic and science edged closer to truth. Now picture yourself journeying southward down stretching lands to the realm of ancient Greece, where mandrakes flourish under moonlit groves. You step into a world where these peculiar plants, with their somewhat human-like root forms, held mythical significance. Ancient Greeks believed mandrakes screamed when uprooted, a belief almost lovably absurd to ponder. Yet their anesthetic properties were no myth. They offered relief, albeit wrapped in danger when mishandled. Historians still debate whether such tales intended to prevent misuse or merely to add mystery to common practices. The allure of story indispensable, whether legend or a morsel of truth. From the Mediterranean you travel to another tale, one of let the metallic whisper of histories more practically embraced, yet significantly misunderstood elements. Here you find ancient Romans attempting to channel lead's strengths in plumbing, and medicine none wiser to its insidious consequences. The soft, pliable metal was favored for its versatility, but it bore a shadow of health calamities that history oft repeated before knowledge sparked the alarm. It blends seamlessly into the practical world of ancient innovation, and yet knowing what we do now of lead poisoning, you can't help but smile at the irony of such dedication to unknowing harm. Not one to overlook more exotic locales. Your journey beckons you to the banks of the Nile, where Egyptian medicine, both fascinating and bizarre, employed crocodile dung as a remedy. Whatever image you conjure, its power lies in illustrating how distant cultures utilized what nature offered, myth binding practicality in a curious dance. Who could have thought such an ingredient could be applied medicinally, whether through faith in divine instruction or shared folklore? It is a curious tale of human creativity against the odds. Each of these so-called remedies took their root in necessity and shadows of hope, masked by layers of shared mythologies and trial. They are the narrative tapestries of a presumptive wellness long past. Yet in your journey you feel a curious comfort in how humankind persisted, nudging forward slowly in the ever-present fog of discovery, letting history's strange but softly numinous details act as your lullaby. You ponder how these ancient practices reflect our own continued search for wellness. A tapestry of attempts and evolutionary understanding gently stitches the past to our present, where each trial, no matter how bizarre or notably dangerous, was laid as a footing for greater truths to follow. The night enfolds around you like an ancient robe, and under the stars, mirrored in the patient streams of Mercury, and countless echoes through time, you take solace. You're wiser in today's whispers of medical advancements, yet there's a thread of beauty in remembering the curious paths taken by those who came before, a whisper of humanity reaching fumbling towards betterment. In this quiet embrace of history's great anomalies, perhaps there's a comfort akin to a soft lullaby, echoing through the chambers of time, speaking softly to that ingenious curiosity innate in us all. As you wander barefoot along the sandy banks of the Nile, a gentle evening breeze whispers ancient secrets of a world long past. You find yourself standing in an ancient Egyptian village where the vibrant hum of life mingles with the distant chants of priests. The air is rich with the scent of spices and herbs, each carrying its own tale of remedy and ritual. In the heart of this civilization, knowledge is revered like a precious artifact passed down through generations. Tonight, you'll dive into the mysteries of ancient Egyptian medicine, a practice both enchanting and puzzling, just like the shimmering mirage on the horizon. The ancient Egyptians were meticulous in their exploration of the human body, a journey that began at the threshold of life itself, mummification. As you follow a group of solemn priests into a dimly lit chamber, the cool shadows embrace you. The towering walls are adorned with hieroglyphs, telling stories of gods and the afterlife. But today, the focus is on the earthly flesh, a concept you're about to become intimately acquainted with. Someone whispers beside you about a peculiar practice, removing organs before preserving the body for eternity. A fascinating ritual like none other. You observe as they work with deliberate precision, deftly extracting and preserving the organs separately in canopic jars. It's a delicate dance reflecting their deep respect for the dead and a profound curiosity about life. Despite their precise understanding of anatomical structure, you can't help but chuckle at a common misconception. You overhear a conversation among the priests, speaking in hushed tones about the brain, dismissing it as a useless lump. They believed the heart was the seat of intelligence and emotion, the core of one's being, which perhaps speaks more about the human condition than the physical body itself. Historians still debate how much the Egyptians truly understood about bodily functions. Nonetheless, the process of mummification offers more than a glimpse into the physical realm. It reveals their worldview intertwining life, death, and the divine. As the process continues, the scent of sacred oils fills the air, a touch of mysticism lingering as they anoint the bodies. Each application is a testament to both faith and science, a reminder that these two threads were inseparable in ancient times. And then you find yourself guessing if our modern marvels will seem similarly comical in millennia to come. Imagine 10,000 years from now, discovering we consider data in wires more precious than tangible leafy green paper money. What a strange symmetry. Suddenly, you notice a translucent veil of honey coating the linen strips, a preservation technique as sweet as it is practical. Who knew such a humble ingredient could hold the power to stave off decay? In your mind, you can almost see the honeybee's tiny buzzing links in this vast cycle of life and preservation. Through this intricate blend of practical skill and spiritual belief, the Egyptians left a legacy deeper than any papyrus scroll could unfold. They were pioneers of their time, builders of a medical foundation on which much of modern anatomy stands. Yet their journey was not without its blind spots, proof of humanity's ceaseless yearning to understand the mystery of existence draped in shadows. As your voyage through the sands of time continues, it's a comforting thought that we're still part of this inexorable quest for knowledge. And now, with the lights dimmed and the background hum of cosmic discovery ever present, it's time to let the echoes of ancient whispers guide you gently into restful dreams, where ancient rivers of thought flow quietly beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered in the light of day. As you find yourself traversing the golden sands of ancient Persia, you might catch sight of a distant cityscape shimmering under the desert sun. It's Bukhara, a hub of knowledge and learning in the early 11th century. Here, amongst scholars and traders, a young boy named Avicenna, known in his native tongue as Ibn Sina, begins his journey of intellectual discovery. From a young age, you can see Avicenna is not like the other children. While they're playing their games in dusty streets, Avicenna is often found listening intently to the discussions of scholars, or reading from scrolls under the shade of a date palm. You notice something unusual about his path to greatness. It begins rather serendipitously with an encounter with a traveling healer who introduces him to the fascinating world of medicine. Historians still debate whether this pivotal meeting was as fortuitous as it sounds. But what is certain is that Avicenna quickly absorbed the medical knowledge presented to him, just as the parched earth drinks in rain. This, combined with his grasp of Greek philosophy, sparked a lifelong passion for the healing arts. Avicenna's story is like a long and winding river that cuts through the rugged terrain of history with the canon of medicine as its jewel, an encyclopedia that would become a cornerstone of both Eastern and Western medical practice. Picture yourself by his side, peering at the carefully drawn illustrations and the neat script of the manuscript, marveling at the synthesis of ancient wisdom with the observations that Avicenna meticulously recorded. He sources from Hippocrates and Galen, but carves out his own space in the intellectual landscape by aligning their theories with empirical study and the new pharmacological insights he develops. There's something fascinating about this blending of ideas, a strange alchemy of sorts. Avicenna's writings are not merely regurgitations of ancient texts. They burst with life and inquiry. His canon divides medicine into logical sections, a structure so effective that for centuries it would serve as the definitive guide in medical schools from Spain to China. And here's an unexpected detail. Despite his profound contributions, Avicenna was known for his restless spirit and somewhat unorthodox lifestyle. In times of stress or perhaps inspiration, he'd play the lute and compose poetry, a true Renaissance man before his time. Imagine the dulcet tones drifting through the air, mixing with the scholarly discussions behind thick stone walls. In Avicenna's world, medicine was as much an art as it was a science. Consider the enchanting notion that healing might require a well-versed understanding of the environment, the stars, and the best use of nature's own medicine cabinet. From the simple remedy of crushed herbs to the more complex preparations involving multiple ingredients, you witness a vibrant tapestry of ancient practices interwoven with Avicenna's own innovative thoughts. Here in Bukhara, the libraries echo with Avicenna's voice as he presents a new way of understanding the human body and its ailments. His canon proposes a balanced diet, exercise, moderation, and surprisingly modern concepts such as the importance of mental health. Picture yourself turning the yellowed pages, feeling the weight of history, giving insights that ring true even in our own time. As the evening breeze wafts through the city, the glow of wisdom in Avicenna's sanctuary remains undimmed. You can't help but feel the gentle pull of his legacy, the way great rivers continue to shape the lands long after their waters have calmed. Here in a place where knowledge meets the night sky, it's easy to find yourself contemplating the perpetual dance of thoughts and discoveries swirling, just like the eddies of wind over desert sand. And so the night deepens, encasing Avicenna's remarkable journey in history's embrace. While sleep beckons to you now, this tale of curiosity, exploration, and enduring legacy remains with you, a calming reminder of the timeless quest for understanding in a world ever in need of healers and dreamers. Hey guys, tonight we embark on a journey through the winding alleys of ancient Rome, where science, medicine, and history collide under the torchlight of knowledge we often take for granted today. Imagine stepping into a time when the world was more mystery than discovery as you wander the cobblestone streets wearing a tunic of anticipation. You have to navigate through a past where one misstep quite literally meant stepping into the wrong side of history. You probably won't survive this, especially when ancient Roman healthcare enters the scene. Let's just say it wasn't the Roman Empire's strongest point. So before you get comfortable, Take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And feel free to share your location and local time in the comments. I always love knowing where in the spinning world my stories land as the night drapes over you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. As the Roman Empire sprawls at its zenith, you find yourself in the bustling streets of Pergamon. It's a lively city renowned for its Pulpus library and its temple of healing dedicated to Asclepius, the god of medicine. Amidst this scene of vibrant knowledge stands a young man with an inquisitive gaze, his name spoken with both admiration and skepticism, Galen. You watch him stride confidently through the streets, parchment in hand, destined for a life at the forefront of ancient medicine. Galen, as you see him, is a man set apart by his zealous dedication to understanding the human body. However, his journey into the annals of history wasn't without its confounding setbacks. He pursued knowledge with an almost reckless determination, not letting minor details like actual human anatomy get in his way. You see, Galen's understanding was primarily based on animal dissections, monkeys, pigs, even elephants when he could find them. This approach, while revolutionary in pursuit, laid a foundation of anatomical misconceptions that would shroud medical progress in a fog of error for centuries. Yet, amidst the palpable air of inaccuracies, you can't help but marvel at the vividness of his observations. Galen meticulously documented the rhythmic dance of arteries and the pumping heart, albeit through a lens somewhat blurred by his unique sources. His logical conclusions, grounded in a mixture of sharp intellect and swirling imagination, asserted that human and animal anatomies were similar. Historians still debate whether his intentions were noble pioneering or merely misled by the bestial specimens at hand. As you journey deeper into this tale, you notice how Galen rises through society, gaining respect as the physician to gladiators. Yes, the very fighters who turned arenas into blood-soaked spectacles sculpted their survival more to Galen's care than their own swordplay sometimes. It was here, behind thick stone walls and echoing cheers, that he sharpened his skills in healing, stitching the wounds of both leather and flesh. A surprising twist awaits you when you learn that these athletes were not just patients, but living subjects of his experiments, undeniably grim, yet yielding insights that solidified his reputation. The culture of the time revered Galen's words as medical scripture. He wove his findings so intricately into the fabric of Roman and subsequently medieval medicine that doubting their accuracy was tantamount to heresy. His voluminous works became the unquestioned gospel, cited fervently, while the true understanding of human physiology remained elusive beneath layers of dogma. You listen to whispers of how medical stagnation seeps through centuries, a lull where no one dares to refute or revise the great Galen. Moving through eras, his influence echoes persistently, embedding itself in monasteries where monks laboriously copy his texts, and universities that teach from his writings as unquestionable truth. The droning lull of monotony stretches in your ears as innovation slows to a crawl, each misshapen fold of parchment passing the baton of his errors like a torch that refuses to flicker out. Yet Beneath this enveloping weight of reverence, Galen's essence was not lost. His inquisitiveness and meticulous experimentation were sparks of genuine aspiration. With hindsight as your guide, it becomes clear why his mistakes lingered. They were intricate and at the time irresistibly persuasive. Although flawed, his works were indispensable for much of what little medicine had constructed up until that point. You wonder how long it took for the world to peel back the layers of his influence, shedding light on the inaccuracies, while holding on to the discursive spirit he unwittingly kindled in future pioneers. Physicians eventually broke through this ancestral veneer, yet while you hear tales of historical titans like Vesalius, who dared to diverge from Galen's path, it's easy to miss the gentle revolution of thought that simmered beneath the surface for centuries. Time ripples forward as you trace how the hands of history steer away from the shadows of his blunders, moving towards the dawn of enlightenment. Lessons were learned through revisions and revolutions, correcting the course laid by his initially grand, but ultimately misguided declarations. The power of Galen lies in the paradox of his legacy, a mixture of hindrance and heroism, whose echoes spurred a meticulous reassessment of medical tenets. As the final whispers of this journey seep into the silence, you come to appreciate how the gentle unraveling of Galen's influence is just as vital to the tapestry of medicine as the stitching of each new discovery. You find solace in this twilight moment where the stars of past and present converge. The world breathes a sigh, content, in knowing that like a lullaby, Galen's story cradles both caution and inspiration for the realms of healing yet to be explored.